guys, so today I'm going to be doing my June wrap-up and July TBR. I read 7 books this month, which I am kind of surprised at, but also really proud of, considering like 2 months ago I didn't even have time to read 1 book. And I read 7 this month, and they weren't thin, they were like all really thick. But we're gonna get into that, well, most of them were really thick. But we're gonna get into that in a little bit. Where's my phone? I need to look up my Goodreads rating because I don't remember what I rated this. I don't remember what I rated for Fixed Scaffold either. I gave it 4. Okay. Okay, so I gave it a 4. The first book I read was Fairest by Marissa Meyer. This is Queen Lavanna's story in the Lunar Chronicles series, so it's kind of like a prequel in a sense. It's pretty short, and this really gives you an insight as to who Lavanna was as a young lunar woman, and this book really just made me hate her more, I think. She's obviously like got some mental issues, and I think a lot of that stems from her growing up and like her family life, because her family kind of sucks, but still she is like an extremely manipulative, just most of the words I would use to describe her are ones that I probably should not say in this video, I'll put it that way. But I'm still glad that I read this, just because I think I understand her on a better level now, so when I go to finish the series I can keep kind of her story in the back of my mind. I'm not entirely sure what's going to happen in winter, but I've heard it's really good. I've heard it's a really good wrap up to the series, and I'm glad that I read this before I go into winter. But honestly, yeah, it just kind of made me hate Lavanna's character more. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I'm going to talk about isn't the next book I read, but aside from the book I'm about to talk about, all the other books are all in a series, so I'm going to talk about those all at once. So the next book I have to talk about is Perfect Scoundrels by Ali Carter. This is the 3rd book in the Heist Society series, which isn't my favorite series of hers. I really like Ali Carter. I loved her Gallagher Girl series. I read that in middle school and high school, and her current series she's working on, Embassy Row, is really good too. And this is not my favorite series by her. I kind of feel like a lot of the writing is a little more geared toward teenagers instead of rather young adults, which is fine. That's totally fine. And sometimes that's even okay. I don't mind that, but I still enjoy the story. I can't obviously really go into a whole lot about the plot since it's the 3rd book in a series, but it's kind of, this whole series is kind of about teenage, teenagers who do heists. They steal stuff. It's kind of like a family business kind of thing. Usually it's pretty much, it's like done for a good reason. They don't just like go around stealing stuff, but they do it for the good of their family or the world or whatever. And I think she's planning on writing a 4th book in this series at some point. I don't know when she's going to actually finish it, because I know she's working on the Embassy Row books. If it does come out, I don't know if I'll read it, because this isn't my favorite series of hers, but it was still, I'm still glad that I picked up the 3rd book, just so I could read the next one in the series. And so I have read the whole series that's come out so far, and I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. The other 5 books I read this month are all part of the same series, and it's a series I'm kind of obsessed with. And that is the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. The first book is Throne of Glass, and then we have Crown of Midnight, Heir of Fire, and Queen of Shadows, and then the Assassin's Blade is a set of 5 novellas that are kind of like prequels to Throne of Glass. I read all of these. I am completely and utterly obsessed with this series right now. Like, I am total Throne of Glass trash. I'm obsessed. I'm upset that I have to wait till September to get the next book. But I'm going to talk about each of these books individually and kind of talk about my thoughts on them without giving away spoilers. So like I said, the first book in the series is Throne of Glass, and I can kind of tell you the plot of this one because it's the first book in the series. So Celaena Sardothien is a 17-year-old assassin. Whenever she was a little girl, she was found pretty much half dead by like the king of the assassins in their kingdom, and so he kind of took her in, but in order for her to stay alive, she pretty much had to train to be an assassin, and she's a really, really good one. But at 17, she was caught. She was sent to kind of like a slave camp prison, and she's been there for a year. And so the novel opens up a year into her imprisonment, and the crown prince of the kingdom comes and tells her that his father is going to be having a competition to get a new assassin. Whoever wins will be his new personal assassin. And the prince wants Celaena to be his champion. He wants her to win. And the king has agreed that if she does win, after 4 years, she'll be able to gain her freedom. So of course, obviously, Celaena chooses the competition instead of just to rot in prison, and it takes off from there. I thought that this was a really good introductory novel. It's probably not my favorite of all of the books, and I've heard that some people actually have a hard time getting into this book, but I will say that if you are one of those people that have a hard time getting into this book, keep going, because the books just keep getting better and better and better. I really enjoyed this book. I think I read each of these books in like 3 or 4 days, and they're not thin books. But I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. The next one is Crown of Midnight, and I know that a lot of time in series the second book is always the weakest, but I definitely don't think this one was. It was a little slow going at first, but there were so many other things important that were happening that it was still extremely interesting, and then about halfway through, I think I just marathoned the whole end of it because it just got to that point where I couldn't put it down. I needed to know what would happen. And literally on the last page of this book, we have like one of the biggest plot twist cliffhangers that I've ever read, because I think I immediately went and ordered the next book because I was like, oh my god, I need it now. I need it right now. I definitely don't think that this book suffered from what is referred to as the second book slump. I thought it was a fantastic second novel, and I gave this also a 5 out of 5 stars. Also, can we just talk about how pretty these covers are? They have her like as a badass assassin on the front, and then on the back she is in dresses, because Celaena also has this really kind of like girly side to her, and I think that's really cool how Sarah J. Maas decided to create this like badass woman with a girly side also, because I feel like there are so many female characters in books that have just like one dimension to them, and it's almost like the author thinks that they can't be both. And I love that Sarah J. Maas created a character who is both, and there's no like weirdness to it at all. The third book in the series is Heir of Fire. I think this was my least favorite of the series, just because, not because the plots were bad, but just because I felt like it jumped between perspectives a little too much, to the point where it was almost hard to keep up at times. But as far as the content, it was fantastic. This is the book where everything in the series really starts to change a lot. You see a lot of character development, you see the plot just like booming and blooming and coming to life, like completely and utterly. And the only thing I really have to complain about this book is that it just jumped between perspectives a little too much for me. But we get introduced to a lot of new characters, a lot of really important characters, and I just thought this was a really, really good book, despite the jumping around. But the fact that that did happen kind of made it my least favorite, just because it was a bit harder to read at times, until it got to the point where I couldn't put it down, because all of these books got to that point for me. I still gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. And I'm going to show you the cover of this one as well. So pretty. After I read Heir of Fire, I actually went back and read The Assassin's Blade, and I'm not sure if this was published between Crown of Midnight and Heir of Fire, or Heir of Fire and Queen of Shadows, but I will say that I highly, highly recommend you read this book before reading Queen of Shadows. It might even be helpful to read it before reading Heir of Fire, but I don't think it's necessary, but definitely read it before you read Queen of Shadows. This, like I said earlier, this is a set of 5 novellas that kind of take place before Throne of Glass, and I really think that I'm really glad that she wrote this, because it explains so much about Celaena's character. It explains why she's the way she is at the beginning of Throne of Glass, and a lot of the stories that happen in this book are extremely important once you get to Queen of Shadows, because there are so many references, which is why I said read this before you read Queen of Shadows. Definitely, it'll help you out a lot. I gave this also 5 out of 5 stars because I'm obsessed with this series, let's be honest. I'm gonna give them all 5 out of 5 stars. Again, with the pretty cover. Just so pretty. And then last we have Queen of Shadows, and this is actually a signed copy. I found it signed at Books A Million and I was just so excited. I just finished this last night, and I'm thinking about doing a full review on it. I haven't done a book review before, but I kind of need to just like step back and really think about everything that happened in this book. This book is 645 pages, and so much happened that I don't even really know how to talk about it yet. But I am planning on doing a review of this at some point. I just need to really organize my thoughts, or it's just going to be a video of me rambling, basically, and I don't want that. I am so mad that I don't have the 5th book on me right now, because this book just was so fantastic. We see so many things that I was predicting to happen come and happen in this book. So many things that were unexpected, so many plot twists. The thing about Celaena as a character is that she's really good at planning ahead. She's really good at figuring out what people are going to do, and she plans ahead, but you don't know that she's going to do that until she reveals it. And it's just like plot twist after plot twist after plot twist. This book was incredible, and as big as it is, I read it in 3 days. Which is good for me, because I am a slow reader. So that's why it's like kind of a big deal to me that I read this many books this month, and especially I read this in 3 days. This book, without a doubt, got 5 out of 5 stars, and I highly encourage you to read this series if you haven't already. So that is what I read in the month of June. I'm quite proud of myself for reading this much, because like I said, I'm kind of a slow reader, so the fact that I read this many books, this many big books in a month, is a really big deal to me, and I'm quite proud of myself. But yeah, if it wasn't for this series, I probably wouldn't have done that because I just got so obsessed with this series, and I still have so many things I want to say about it. But I gotta figure out what all those things are gonna be first. Now for my July TBR. I don't know entirely what I want to read this month, just because this month the booktubeathon is happening. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I will link the booktubeathon channel in the doobly-doo down below. But because of that, I don't know what I'm going to read yet because they haven't released the readathon challenges yet. And so I can't really plan what I'm going to read, but until the booktubeathon happens, this is what I think I'm going to read. First book on my TBR is Since You've Been Gone by Morgan Matson. I just recently bought this book. I haven't read a Morgan Matson book before, and after just being so engrossed in the fantasy Throne of Glass world, I really think I need a contemporary or two to kind of bring me out of that world a little bit and kind of get me focused before I dive into another fantasy series or fantasy book or anything. I'm only a chapter into this book, so I don't have a lot to say about it yet, but I'm looking forward to reading this. And the only other thing I'm really planning on reading this month is I want to start reading the Percy Jackson series by Rick Riordan. I was originally planning on starting The Lightning Thief this month, but then Throne of Glass happened, and nothing else in the world mattered. And I would like to read as much of the series as I can this month. I don't know if I'll finish it, but I'm actually going out of town for a few weeks and I won't have my books with me, which means I'm just going to have to take a bunch of random books with me that might work for booktubeathon, but I'm definitely going to be taking this series with me, and we're going to see how much of it I can get through in July. So that's it for this video. I think I've rambled on long enough, and let me know if you've read the Throne of Glass series and your thoughts, because I want to talk about it with someone. And yep, I will see you guys next time with another video. Bye.